There's a lot of us that put a lot of love into this, and I hope it shows, and we hope you come back. So who is a first timer to Agile Auckland? Yes! Okay, so it's like $5 at the door. Just kidding. We, like I said, we do this out of the goodness of our hearts. This is a volunteer organization, but we are so happy to have you. Who's not from Auckland? Is there anyone that came from? Hi.
Oh, no, I am.
Okay.
But not.
But not originally. Yeah, same. Just in case you couldn't tell, I'm trying to pick up the Kiwi accent. I know most of the swear words, but yeah. So it's really good to see you guys. We do these events monthly. Sometimes it'll be virtual. You know, we pivot. We're an Agile organization, but we do have several of our committee members here. So Selena, Jim, Luke, Ziggy. Did I miss anybody? No? If you're not here, raise your hand. Is that how that goes? But yeah, we are dedicated to uplifting the Agile community, because we think we uplift our skill set, the organizations in Auckland will also lift up, right? We have so much talent on this island, and we need to showcase it. So that's really what this community is all about, so thank you. And we are partnering with Bands and Epic Agile for this event. So Bands is Business Agility New Zealand. They're another meetup group, but we always work together. Bianca and I work very closely together, the B&B team. So they focus on business agility and different ways of doing that within the business. People always think of Agile as being kind of software centric, but it is the only way to be truly Agile is for the whole organization to go Agile. So check out those meetups as well. And then Epic is also sponsoring, and we will have a giveaway at the end of the evening. So stay tuned. All right. I'm going, let's do some housekeeping. I'm trying to remember in my head. It's been a while since we've had a real meetup. I'm so used to doing it from my desk with a beer, so at least I have my beer, but.
Your microphone's on.
Yeah. You're on mute. I know the committee always tells me that because they want me to be on mute, but that's not the way it works. The restrooms, toilets, are on this side of the building and that side of the building, okay? The door to the outside is going to lock at 6 o'clock. So if you go outside or need a smoke break, I would suggest, I know it's like in the middle, but try not to interrupt the speakers, but out there is good. So even if you go out, like out that door and around, you can go out, but if you need a smoke break or something, that's totally fine. And then if there's any kind of emergency, there's exits here. We can even go out this door and just get away from the building. Just be faster than the person, behind you, basically. That's my rule. All right, we're going to get this party started. We're going to have Ryan come up and do an opening keynote. Then I'll invite the panel to come up. We're going to hear about their lessons. We're going to have Q&A at the end, but unless the speakers want you to ask questions, which we do want, it's a curious group. We want you to ask questions, but we're going to be using Menti. So sorry that code is really little, but if you go to menti.com, type in that code, you can ask questions as we're going. And then at the end, we'll go do Q&A. I'm going to do audience Q&A, and then Bianca will use the Menti. So whatever you're comfortable with, right? If you don't want to speak up, it's all good. But just make sure to ask your questions on Menti, or you can wait till the end and I'll ask you myself. All right. Any questions? Did everyone get enough pizza? Let's hope that, is there any left? Because we don't want to take it out. All right. All right, we are thrilled to have Ryan the Lion here for our keynote. It's the first time I've met him in person. I think most of you have seen him on LinkedIn. So if you haven't, go check him out. But welcome, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as I've been recording the intro in the beginning, I thought I would just capture the crowd to begin with. As this is the Agile event, and I've got a little bit of a story to tell about doing the keynote here tonight, I thought that we would make it agile. So that means we want lots of customer feedback. So when I go, I want you to call out your response, what you naturally think is the answer to what I'm saying, right? So what has been like the biggest disaster of our current time? I didn't hear. COVID. Come on, let's warm it up. Okay, so let's warm it up with, when I count to 3, I want everyone to call out rawsome. So really roll the R. It's like awesome, but we put R at the beginning of it. and I'll explain in a moment. So, on the count of 3, I want everyone to yell, awesome. 1, 2, 3, awesome! Right. So when I point out to you, and I want the customer feedback, I want to hear it at that level. So what was the biggest disaster of modern times for us? I can hear you. Okay. What was that extra one I did?
Sorry,
I had 2 disasters today, and I had to pivot. So the first one was, I realised I was the keynote speaker, not the closing remarks speaker. My second disaster is that on the way here, I was involved in a car accident. Yeah, so I got arse wiped. I don't know what you call it, but the car coming behind me went around me and hit the back corner, chasing them down Nelson Street at about 120k as they're trying to escape. And I caught them in the car park over here. But don't worry, they ended up being a 16-year-old female who probably started crying. I almost cried with her because I felt terrible. And they said, look, it's okay, we'll have a look, we'll see if we can, oh no, it's pretty scratched, we're going to need insurance, so we've got insurance. So, the sort of theme we're going to have, as you might imagine, is dealing with disasters, being agile, pivoting. Yeah, as I was introduced, I'm Ryan the Lion, and I actually had the note here. If you know me, it's probably from LinkedIn. So who remembers the post that come through that said your digital transformation was affected by the CIO, the something else, or COVID? Only 2 hands. What have you been doing? You've been doing Agile. So hands up who are the product managers. Hands up who are the Scrum Masters. Hands up who are the technical leads. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask any questions or make you stand up and do anything embarrassing. The devs, the BAs, PMs. Okay. The UX designer. Oh, there's one of you. Okay. So, Ryan the Lion. Yeah, it's my childhood nickname. And I have a really loud voice, but the reason I use it and the reason I have it on LinkedIn is that when I first started working, after a week I came home, I was living at home and said to Dad, my boss is an arsehole, you wouldn't believe what he made me do. And his advice was, son, I'll give you the same advice my father gave me. So his dad's 40 years older than him, my dad's 20 years older than me, so that's 60-year-old information. Keep your head down, you bum up, do your job, you're not there to make friends. So your friends are outside of work and you go there and do your job. Don't tell anyone your personal life because they'll use it against you to get a promotion. And I said, that sucks! What world do we live in? And my dad said, welcome to the real world, son. So, unfortunately, in my first year I did miss a promotion through sharing personal information. But now, fast forward to today, and for the last 5-10 years we've been talking about bringing your real self to work. We're full self, sorry, that's reference, bring your full self to work. So we have a nickname at school, we have a nickname with our family, we have a nickname with our sports team, we have a nickname with our mates. But when we come to the corporate workspace, we have a corporate mask on, which we hide behind. And it's still stuck there from intergenerational, going back to granddad, dad. Hence, by using Ryan the Lion, the idea is to live and breathe my brand, which is bringing your full self to work. So AFQY, my business, is about meeting the person, not the suit. So now you know I'm not insane, we can crack on. Awesome! COVID was the force behind transformation, and I think there are some wonderful things that have happened and some terrible things that have happened, and we all know about them. What I wanted to look at is the Great Reset opportunity, which I'm going to reframe as the Great Forget opportunity. Because how long did it take for the motorways to get clogged up? Did anyone sit in the motorway today? Yes. Does anyone here use public transport? Does anyone here use sustainable transport? I'm impressed to see so many hands up. I usually ask that question and people go, what's that? It's bubble walks. Who remembers going on a bubble walk? Right. And what was the big thing about a bubble walk? We would say hello. Remember when you're walking past a stranger? Linda's not a stranger, but hey, we wouldn't normally do that on a bubble walk because it was social distancing. But on a bubble walk, you would walk past a stranger, even if on the other side of the road, and they would go, hey, how's it going? How's your day? Oh, not too bad. Walking the dog for the 3rd time today. Yeah, we know, we're walking our dog for the 3rd time today. So I met all the dog walkers in my neighbourhood. But now, as I'm out walking the dog, I'm a pretty friendly person, although sometimes I don't look like it, especially if I change and wear what I would wear at home living in West Auckland, which is rugby jerseys, rip track pants, probably muddy track pants because I've been at rugby practice or something like that. I'm a coach, not a player, by the way. So I probably look quite intimidating and scary, but nonetheless, you're in West Auckland and you say, and I'll even do a higher pitched voice deliberately. Hi, how's it going? Well, maybe not quite that high, but people just to be like. So who else has experienced that? You seeing that now? Yeah. We're not having a great reset, but we're not having a great forget either. Things are changing, but more slowly than a great reset that we all talked about in lockdown 1, but faster than they were before COVID. Opportunity has yeah, it was probably quite a hard one. It wasn't really a direct question to answer or bring something up, but it's opened up. People are prepared to change and move. So if we think about it, when I was doing, so if I think about myself, right, I had AFQY, my event, with 150 people attending on March 26th. That was the second day of the first lockdown. So I cancelled it, because we had to, and I was worried, like you probably were, are zombies going to be climbing over my fence to raid my fridge? What's going to happen? Like, is this like one of those video games? Are we going to get infected by the virus? When I cancelled it, someone said, oh, that's all right, I'll run an AFQY. If anyone wants to come to something, I'll put something online. I was like, dude, that's my company. You can't do that. So I had to pivot, and I had to run it online. On that second day, people were freaking out, as you probably remember. I was. Remember my reference to zombies. So I ended up running an event and having 10 speakers, and they all spoke about different things, from being a director to being this to being that to the, here we have the CEO of the Ministry of Health talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So his inbox went from 120 emails a day to 950 a day. Not surprisingly, one of the stats he talked about. But opportunity has opened up in the sense that we're not stuck in status quo. People are prepared to change. People are prepared to go, well, we've done it like that for a long time, like Ryan's granddad, like Ryan's dad, like Ryan, who took the advice from dad, from granddad, and we're prepared to change and do things differently. Discovered a brilliant term through lockdown, which is cognitive dissonance.
Wow.
Does anyone know what that is?
Jim?
Do you want to tell us?
That's quite a big topic.
Yeah. Do you want me to make it short?
Elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, so cognitive dissonance is when you're arguing with someone and you can't use logic because they are just defying logic. The sky is blue. No, it's not. You're stupid. It's pink with polka dots. No, it's actually still blue. No, it's not. It's pink with polka dots. That's an example, really bluntly, of cognitive dissonance. No logical argument or rebuke will actually convince the person. And we saw this through lockdown. Controversial Trump, which is, we'll all never forget when he suggested we could inject ourselves with disinfectant. Now, would anyone like to start a business in disinfectant?
No.
So it's not a real solution. It's not a real solution. So, if I summarise, COVID has changed the world. Quite a simple and obvious statement. But when we look at the small and large things, it hasn't changed much in some regards. The motorways are clogged. We're still doing things a lot of the way we still used to. And I actually heard a thought before that we just don't have time. While we've got all these different rates of change, we haven't got the great reset, but we have got some things resetting. Is the lessons is that status quo can be changed if we work together and collaborate as a team. I just want to say thank you very much for your time and patience. I recognise myself that I went a little bit all over the place with my notes. The last thing I'll close on is that I named this speech Navigating Chaos, and wanted to give credit to Kendra Ross, who actually gave me a little statement in conversation, and it feels like my little speech went a little bit of chaos.
So, yeah, he needs beer. Look, and literally, our bad. Like, I own that. He was closing. Sally Copeland was going to open. She's on holiday, and it just, we pivot, eh? So, I just organizers don't get it right, so all good. But I'm going to introduce the panel now. So, I know each one of these people in some way, shape, or form. I've met them all, so that's a good thing. Ladies first, Angela Badistich, come on up. So Angela and I used to work together at ANZ. sit anywhere. Yeah, ladies' choice. We were part of the homeowners tribe for about a year, and then I got ejected off that tribe. Nothing, not, that sounds horrible, like, oh, we don't want Beth, like, she's out here. They just changed the model. What a fun year that was, right? We really got to see what a good tribe looks like at ANZ. They were delivering value, so happy to have Angela here to talk about her lessons of 2020. Nick Foard. Nick Foard brought me to Auckland, and I never worked a day with him. He hired me at a surety, and the Friday before I was supposed to show up at the office, that was his last day at a surety. So I think we hugged once, maybe? Yep. But we've had coffee since, so all is forgiven, because yay, Auckland, no Trump. So,
and yay, me too.
Yes. So it's Nick's fault that I'm here. And Greg Wheeler, thank you so much. Nick's boss, yes, Phil, is that still a thing?
Still a thing. Yeah,
still a
still a
thing.
thing.
Okay.
Till 9 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, nice, and we'll see what he says, eh? So SkyCity's doing some amazing work. We've had Nick talk about their program here, and I'm sure we will again, but we're so happy to have you here as part of the lessons. Chris Lennon, come on up. Chris Lennon is a Kaizen coach at Freedom, and we work together on Basis at Breakfast, which is one of our other initiatives at Agile Auckland, because again, we really want to lift up the Scrum Master community, and Chris is very passionate about that as well, so we're so happy to have him here. And Andrew Flamel, yay, for questions. So we were at Nike together, never met the man in Nike, but we were there about the same time, so we know a lot of the same people. But again, Flexure is really going through a growth spurt, and they're doing some amazing things, so I'm very excited to hear what you all have to say. So welcome, and who wants to go first? Nice. All right, thanks, Greg. Welcome.
So look, before I start, just big thanks to Beth and the team for inviting us here tonight to speak to you. It's a real privilege, and hopefully you get something out of what we're about to say. What I'll do, just if we cast back our minds, and Ryan talked about COVID, 12 months ago we faced really uncertain times, didn't we? We didn't know what COVID would mean for us, what it would mean for the companies that we worked for, the companies we owned, and what would it mean for our families and you and I. So certainly very challenging times ahead. I'll just do a little scene setting. So by end of March, SkyCity's land-based business was fully closed, doors shut, no customers, no revenue. ICT had downsized by 30%, and we had an agile transformation that had been designed and planned for, designed for more people than what we ended up with after downsizing. So we faced some real challenges. But those challenges really turned out for me to be the year of opportunity, an opportunity to grow new leaders, an opportunity to grow new leaders in new roles, to experiment and try new things, and to try and accomplish more for less. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. What are the learnings? There's an awful lot, more than I've got time to talk to you about tonight. But there's just a few that probably stick out for me, and like I said, hopefully you'll get something from them. So the first one won't be a surprise to you, and that's a well-constructed plan can quickly become superseded by things like pandemics. And I'm a firm believer that opportunity is often disguised as adversity, and if you just push a little bit further ahead, peek around the corner, that opportunity will present itself. So rather than waiting until we were all back in the office and able to have face-to-face sessions, we took the decision to use that opportunity to reshape our product teams and launch our Agile transformation virtually. And Nick will talk more about this. We've got a bit of a pony show here. Double act. So I'll talk about some of the high-level stuff, and Nick will drill into the detail. So we launched our Agile transformation virtually behind screens. We did that simply because we owed it to our people. We had 30% of our team we had to say goodbye to, and that was quite painful. We lost some really good people and we had to make some really hard decisions. But we also had to look at how we could continue to keep our business operating. So of the capital plan, sorry for me to say, and by mid-April, half of our capital program, ICT program for FY20 had been paused, with really, really strict criteria applied to those initiatives that were able to continue. And we had really sort of three main themes. Complete our Adelaide expansion program, which was a multi-million dollar investment in that property. And because of the conditions in Australia, we're able to keep working on that. Anything that was absolutely critical to maintaining business, the viability of our business, that's how serious it was. And then the third one was any contracts that were too expensive to get out of. So we had to really pivot quickly, and sort of stopping that amount of in-flight work was really disruptive. But we spent hours and hours and hours, late nights, early mornings, scenario planning, what ifs, and we ended up on a plan that just enabled us to limp through to the end of that financial year, which was the end of June. So coming back to a good plan and how things can get out of shape quite quickly, we decided to launch our transformation, and it wasn't perfect, far from it. So if anyone thinks that what we're doing up at SkyCity is perfect, it definitely isn't. In fact, we've very purposely not tried to make it perfect, but it just had to be acceptable, and we had to do it at pace so that we could continue to keep things working that we were committed to delivering. The second one that supported all of that was a really strong underlying culture is critical for adoption. We're still in early days, we're in our infancy, but we've got a really strong culture that we've developed over a number of years at SkyCity. And being able to launch that transformation in a virtual way where people were sitting behind screens and you couldn't read a room, and you had to remind people if they were talking you couldn't hear them to turn off the mute button. I think really helped us to move that along. We've done some scene setting with the team prior to lockdown. We've done town halls and breakout groups so it wasn't a surprise. What was a surprise was how quickly we went ahead and set that transformation in flight. Some interesting behaviours that we weren't expecting to see, and the first one was command and control behaviours started to become more pronounced. As we asked team members to think about becoming a bit more cross-functional, so sharing knowledge across team members. It was quite foreign for a number of our individuals. We tried to, within the delegated authority frameworks that we have, and approval frameworks, we tried to delegate as much decision making to the teams. And some individuals felt that that was a loss of control for them. And we weren't really quite prepared to deal with that, but it's something that we've taken on board, and we've relied on Nick and his coaching team to work with those individuals to really see the benefit of what we're doing and help them to get through those fears that often these big transformations can place in people. The other one too was that planning is really hard, and it's really hard for individuals that have spent the majority of their career in break fix mode or reactive mode. And the majority of our teams are made up of operational staff that have been in those roles and done a great job, frankly, for many years. But we've asked them to start thinking about planning their work. So that's been a real challenge. But I guess the key learning there is we need to be patient. We need to respect where they've come from and where we're trying to get them to, and again use great coaching and training to identify where those areas of development lie. It's not a skill that you can learn overnight, but it's certainly very critical for what we're trying to do. And the last one, well actually no, there's two more. Another one that I was just talking to, I forget who it was before this session started. I heard the term pull knowledge. We made a really conscious decision to start with the basics, do and learn the basics first, and then introduce a concept at a time. We're in a real luxurious position at SkyCity. We don't have a third party like a McKinsey or an executive that's driving an agenda or a timeline for us. We set the trajectory, we determine the pace at which we want this agile transformation to run at, and we're fortunate that we've got the ability to do that and team members to learn at the pace that they can learn. And then the last one really is about data. You know, in this day and age, it's all about data. But absolutely critical for what we are doing in the scenario that we're in. Look, what we've done with Azure DevOps is just simply amazing, and probably a story on itself, and I think Nick, you may have already spoken about it, but it's a beautiful thing. We've got dashboards and we've got a team that's taken to it like a duck to water. I've never seen a team of people take to Azure DevOps and a tool set like our group have. So that's been fantastic. But the key insight there is that we use data to remove emotion from the performance conversation. We use it to track teams' progress, and we use it to really provide targeted coaching, and Nick will talk about this, where it's needed and mattered most. So we don't take a generic sheep dipping approach to everybody. We do a really targeted coaching with a small team. Actually, we've got Todd and Snarley here as well, and that's the team. Todd, Snarley and Nick, and they're doing a fantastic job across 14 or 15 Scrum teams. So we let the teams pull knowledge. Rather than force it on them, we're letting them pull the knowledge and come to us when they're ready to take the next step. Now, thankfully, we've done this a couple of times, so we kind of know where we need to be and where we want to be, and we can help shape and guide those conversations, but we let the teams pull knowledge and come to us and grow and mature at the pace that they can operate at. And I think that's probably a key secret as to why we've been really successful in what we've done to date. We're 2 pips in, we've only done 2, and we had a session this morning which was a really interesting one, where the teams are starting to identify continuous improvement opportunities within their teams that we would have only expected to be having a conversation in 12 to 18 months' time. So, you know, we're really fortunate. We've got an awesome team that have taken to this better than we thought that they would have by this stage of the transformation. And I'll just finish by just one last thing. I talked about experimentation. Nick and I do a lot of that. I find I go to him and say, what if we do this? What if we try that? What if we stop this? And he typically turns that into an experiment that we either keep, refine, or bin. And it's a really cool way of working. And we have a lot of fun, and it keeps us relevant, and it makes us feel like we're still moving forward and introducing new ideas and things to the team. So my take out here for you guys, if find that person in your company or organisation that responds really well to the what if question, and invite them onto your team and keep them really busy, because you can have some fun, and who knows what might happen. Be careful, because it might happen. So look, that's all I've got to say. I'm looking forward to the Q&A, and thanks for listening, and I'll hand to Nick.
Yeah, thank you so much. Question on Menti, I see a bunch of questions on there, so, but are you hiring? It sounds really... Nick, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so how long have I got? Because you know I can talk.
Tell me what's our safe word? What's that?
It's different from last
Blueberry
time.
or
All right.
I'll wave you down.
So look, I'll drop down just from Greg's talk there, and just sort of just highlight some of the things that have been challenging and fun through 2020, because it really has been a bit of a roller coaster for me and my team. I suppose the first one that really hit us was everybody needed a place. We all needed a place to go suddenly when we were dropped into level 4 lockdown. And what I mean by place is a digital online place. A lot of the teams that I was working with in the delivery space, we were already in Azure DevOps. But all of a sudden, everybody else needed a place to go because they didn't have an online collaborative space to go. I was wondering how other organisations were dealing who didn't have something already. We were super lucky that I got lots of requests for, we need a team, can you set us up a board? And we were able to get everybody into Azure DevOps really quickly. And as Greg said, everybody took to it really well. And I think that was probably because if you've used Trello before, which most people had, it was quite straightforward to move across into Azure DevOps. just to use it at a visibility level, to have something to look at on the screen with your teammates when you're stuck in your living room surrounded by screaming kids. So for me, having a tool that gives you that digital collaboration space was an absolute lesson for us in 2020. Had we not had it, my God, we'd have been stuck. So lesson 1. Lesson 2 was the worst of times can also have silver linings. And for me, this means that at the time that we went into lockdown, not everybody was fully behind what we were doing. And what COVID did for us was it gave us all a shared thing to get behind. It gave us a shared purpose. And so everything suddenly revolved around replanning, getting everybody into Azure DevOps, maintaining communications, and working closely together. So, Ryan pointed it out earlier when he said about, what drove your Agile adoption. Well, yeah, COVID did. It did speed us up. It did force everybody to suddenly collaborate online in an online space. But the flip side of that was video killed the radio star. This was where all of a sudden I was really excited, as anybody who saw the talk I did here last time about how we were kicking off and it was going to be great, and I went to SkyCity to work with Greg to drive an Agile adoption, and I love being in front of people and coaching, and now I'm behind a screen. My dream has been killed. Right? My Agile view of what it was going to be like has now been shattered, probably forever. Because, how many of you now work from home a couple of days a week? Yeah? So I ran a session yesterday with people in front of me, and that's the first time I've done that for the last at least 6 months. Every other session I've done has been either all online or partially online. And in fact, that's, Todd and Sonali, that everything is like that now. And but thank God for video, because if we hadn't have had people like Loom, I don't know if anybody picked up Loom over the, Loom was fantastic for me. So from an innovation point of view, I used Loom to record how to use Azure DevOps videos like it was going out of fashion. Because nobody knew how to use the tool. So video, pumped it out, and then obviously using the video to communicate, to see each other, to get the face-to-face contact. I think we banned anybody from coming to our meetings who didn't turn their cameras on, because there's people like me and Greg who like to see faces. But certainly for me, I find it hard as an Agile coach to coach when I can't see 57% of the conversation. Right? I can't see your face, I can't see your body, I can't see your motions, I can't see how you're looking at each other. I can't just go and sit with a team and see how they're working. I actually now have to use data. And so as Greg said, again, the way that we set up Azure DevOps, it monitors probably the wrong word. It captures data about what our teams are doing, so that my team and I can interpret that data and spot opportunities for spot coaching in the right places. So obviously we do check-ins like you guys will do, and we do all the ceremonies like you guys will do, and then we look at our charts and our data, and we can see when people are dumping stories at the end of a sprint because they want to score 100% completion rate. We can see bad behavior, but then we can also see good behaviors too. And we use that data, and that's something I joked with Greg recently, that I've become a data-driven Agile coach. I think that's probably true. It's made my job easier because I can't see the people. So I have to use the data, and that's probably one of my biggest lessons out of 2020 is being able to do that when I can't see the people. Another real surprise, and maybe I should have expected this one, was the quick look busy. This was teams not used to Agile had suddenly come from an organisational world where they were used to overloading themselves or looking busy because the boss was there and they had to look super busy. And so thrust into an Agile world with an Agile tool, they were filling their backlogs with like everything. Nobody was saying no at all. There's still some of that. But within a couple of weeks, you had 300 to 400 items in a backlog, and it was just insane. And then everybody was starting 17 items at once because they hadn't yet changed their mindset to not looking busy and to leave that gap. So that's something that my coaches and I have been really challenged with over 2020 and even into 2021, is helping those teams that come from an operational space change the way they think about work, and that planning is actually part of the work. So that'll lead me on to the last one, which is really just about planning. And Greg touched on it. Planning isn't easy for everyone, I discovered. And I made a mistake just thinking that everybody plans, right? But no, they don't. Some people find it really difficult to plan, especially if you've never done it before. And you know, we've started seeing that, you know, certainly over the last couple of months, and even now, there's still teams that find it very, very hard to plan and collaborate together. And so coming out of 2020 into 21, that whole collaborative planning cross-team made it a little bit harder for us by COVID. As Greg said, we lost some people, and the structure that we designed to underpin our transformation and to shoot for almost full stack teams couldn't be realised anymore. And so now we have a bit of a mix. We have some product teams that have most of the skills that are required, but we still have some capability teams or activity teams that look after a centralised networking piece of work or a centralised cloud or database piece of work. And so it creates handoffs, and those handoffs slow things down, but of course you can work with them as long as you understand how to plan and interact and collaborate and communicate with other people. And that's probably been our biggest challenge, is working with our teams to help them understand that planning is work. It's not just meetings, right? You can stop pushing back and going, there's too many bloody meetings, dude, come on. It's the work. And then actually getting them to, you know, get up out of their chair and walk over to the person who's just over there who you used to email every day, and actually get them to interact. So that's probably the biggest lesson for me is teaching people to collaborate and plan. It's just damn hard. But we're getting there. We are getting there. All right, that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go off program here. So, Angela, do you want to tell us your She wasn't ready for it. See, I saw
Signing for it. Shocked. I think I'm going to be okay with it, because you're pivoting. So thank you everyone, thank you Beth for inviting me. So I think everybody had different lessons learned for lockdown, how you felt on that day. I don't know if everybody watched that announcement from Dissonance and just went, oh my God, like what is going to happen? And then I remember going, oh my God, getting overwhelmed by social media and being like, oh my, like, yeah, what was it? Aliens are coming, oh my God, we're all going to die, and we live on an island, like out of all things. So I think there's everybody's got their own experiences with what happened last year, and I guess some of mine are more kind of from a leadership personal side. So one of the things that really stuck out for me, and I think for lots of people, is that people can work as efficiently and deliver from home as they could in the office. And right now, a year later, like we're going, yeah, absolutely. But a year ago, how many people do you know that were just like, they are not in the office, they are not doing their work? And we believe that, right? A lot of people did believe that. And oh yes, you can work from home, but you're going to call me and we're going to agree your time. Like there was a lot of, I was actually looking back, quite inflexibility. So I think that was a really big lesson learned. And as a result, for example, at ANZ, we've completely changed our flexible working policies. My squads are now empowered to decide what days they come in the week. So there's no management over them. The minimum is 2 days a week. They've got to decide within their squad, right? Because we know there's value when they're together. And obviously they're empowered to be a part, but they've got to own that, right? And I think that's one of the biggest lessons learned out of all of our operating models, is that we can work from home. We can now cope when we suddenly get locked down, and hopefully there's no lockdown 5.0, but there might be, right? So we're open to that. The other thing is leadership resilience, and I think we all sat there and went, leadership resilience, I can handle any fault, any system down. But when you've suddenly got all these people working from home and also working for a bank, we had a whole lot of legislative changes around home loans, and being in the homeowners tribe, hello, you guys, we need you now. Plus some compliance projects, plus VAU, plus the big backlog of everything else. That's actually when resilience really, as a leader, came out, that you've got to be freaking out on the inside and at the same time going, I've got you, I hear you and I will help you prioritise this, and making some tough calls and being able to go, actually, like you guys had to let 30% of your workforce go, and that's kind of resilience, right? I thought I had a resilient muscle, but it got really stretched. And I think that's really important, is that resilience is something that you've got to test and you grow and you're mindful. But being a people leader, you're that voice of calm and reason. And at one point I remember somebody ringing me up and going, this person's not being nice to me. And I was like, oh my God, I think they're freaking out. And being able to be that voice of calm, it's okay, we've got your back, we'll sort that. And I think that's really important, that we learn how important that is, right? Is listening to the people, being that voice of calm, because it was crazy. We didn't know how long we were going to be locked down as well. And another thing that really I was thinking about today, coming here, is that we'd always been, oh, it's a small world, you know, you go to London for 24 hours flying, I can go to Australia. All of a sudden, this world is small. We are on an island far away. I've got a sister-in-law in Australia, right? They moved there going, oh, we can pop back whenever we want. We can't. And now I've got people going on maternity leave at work, and they had expected their in-laws to come from South America and support them. They can't. So as a result, they've got to take extended leave. So while we're on an island and far away, we're doing the best we can. We've got all these people who also had another developer who hasn't seen his family in a year and a half. So I think we've also got to remember that we're on an island, but we've got all these people that are going through all these different things, and they require different types of support, right? For us to look at our leave policies, can we support you as a squad? Yeah, we support you if you've got to change your hours or have an afternoon off every Monday to help your family as well. And I think that's really important, is that those soft skills, right? Is to be able to go, actually, I hear you, and oh, that's not so good, but you know, what can I do? And I think that's something that we really, really thought about as well. And I think the other thing coming onto that is that during lockdown, you know, everybody was like, oh, this is really interesting. I've got all this time. I don't like work meetings, man, and then I'm not running around, and I'm not running to different events after work, and I'm not running after kids, and suddenly I think it also gave people a chance to reset their lives a little bit. And what's really interesting is once in a while you kind of hear people go, the lockdown's quite interesting. I don't feel so busy. Life is hectic, and there's always obviously different stresses, but it also helps us reset our priorities. Like at work, we reset our plans and what our priorities were. And I think even as people, we kind of went, actually, this is more important to me. Like, actually, I want to check how my friend is in the UK, or I want to touch base, and that connection is really important, to be able to connect with people, which during our first lockdown, we did have lots of virtual meetings and virtual drinks, and one of the things I did was make sure to ring up each team member every couple of weeks and go, how are you? Even though you kind of go, I'm here for you, you kind of, when you actually talk to them personally, they start telling you the story. We'll be going, I had one lovely gentleman who was just absolutely phenomenal during the lockdown. I was like, who are you? He goes, look, my wife's lost her job, but I can control my circle of influence, and I can do a great job, and I can enjoy this right now, and she'll be okay. And it's just, you've got to be human as well, because you forget that, okay, you're freaking out, but everybody else's story is just as hard and just as challenging. They may not see their family for who knows how long, and all of those other things. So I think as a leader, during lockdown, what was really important is connecting. And everybody likes connection in a different way, and that's something that you obviously learn and talk to your team members and all of that, but as a people leader, that's really important. And also being in a squad, some of the squad members I had do a Friday quiz, so they did a virtual quiz on a Friday, right, with a beer in their hand. So it's just that connection, right, that we've got a responsibility to connect, and they've also got a responsibility to look after each other. And I think that goes back to, you know, that general message was be kind. That actually applies to us in the workplace to keep going, right? That we sit there and we actually care for people. And that's like back to vulnerable leadership. You don't just bring, you know, when we talked about that mask, you actually bring yourself to work, right? Everybody's fighting a really hard battle. And when you think about that, also reflecting on the past year, is how important mental health is as well. And that one of the things is they set up that 1737 number that people can ring or text. And interesting enough, not a lot of people know that. I don't know if you guys know it. It's a mental health number. You can call, you can text, 1737. Best number in the world, trained counsellors. Lots of people don't know that, right? And quite often, you know, colleagues or friends are going through a whole lot of trauma. And I'm like, have you thought about ringing 1737? I had somebody ring them, like, that was so nice. And it's just another way we can support each other, and I think that's what we're learning through this and through the pandemic and everything, is that you can get support in other ways. Support doesn't have to be financial, it doesn't have to be in a building, it can be just talking and supporting each other as well. So I think it's been a really interesting year. I think the next year will be interesting as we're getting in and out of it. I want to go to Australia this year, and I want to go to a foreign country and all of that. But again, it's one of those, we've been really lucky in New Zealand that we've lived in this bubble, and I'm really thankful for it because we're not having tough conversations. Just on a personal note, I had a cousin in Croatia get COVID, and the call was in her area, please be careful because we don't have enough respirators, right? And I just went, how thankful are we right now? We're in this amazing country, and we went through whole lot of drama last year, and we're sitting up here in a big group of people and having lessons learned, but we don't have to worry about there being enough respirators. And I think we also have to, be thankful for things along the way as well. So so they're just my few lessons learned. So thanks.
Andrew, you can Rochambeau, you can do, does everyone know those, rock, paper, scissors? Yeah, paper, scissors, rock.
All right. Oh, okay. I guess that means I choose whether to go first.
True, yes,
or
you do, yeah.
whatever. All right, I'll go first. So I've got some reasonably ungrouped thoughts, which I've jotted down in my handy-dandy notebook. So I'm a Kaizen coach at Freedom, and Freedom was acquired by Visa just over 3 years ago. So we had our 3-year kind of anniversary, or whatever you would call it. And we don't make a distinction at Freedom between a Scrum Master or Team Facilitator and an Agile Coach, so it's an integrated model. We do both. So I've tried to bring, I guess, a grassroots view or team-centric view to 2020, which was a great idea. I have to be honest, showing a bit of vulnerability. When Beth said, do you want to be on the panel? I said, sure, absolutely. And I'd never been on a panel before, so I thought that's pretty cool. But I didn't really know what it was about. But then when I sort of did the prep, it's like, yeah, let's get together as a community and let's retro 2020. It's a cool thing to do. So the first of my thoughts would be I guess just on a personal note, I'm married to the charge nurse manager at North Shore Hospital Radiology. So I was getting a bit of an advanced freak-out track. I always felt I was maybe a week, anywhere between a week and 3 days.
Did you stock up on flour and yeast?
Honestly, we did do a little bit of stock up. It's unsocial. We didn't do the toilet paper thing. No, I mean, you've got a cloth really at the end of the day. I never quite got that whole thing, but yeah, we were sort of getting that advanced sort of thing, and she said one day the head of the department was sort of saying, here's what could happen, and talking about respirators. And it may be different now, but we really weren't well set up for respirators at all, and it's that sort of thing, and deaths and patients, and and then we were looking at that, and she said she was literally shaking, and she'd been a nurse for 20 years and seen people die and all the rest of it, but people were crying, they were called, it was a 9/11 type thing, they were calling their husbands, so definitely spare a thought for the healthcare workers, because I sort of got that perspective. But yeah, as it sort of became apparent, it became harder and harder to ignore. I remember one day I came into the office, I said, look, I'm just going full COVID, forget about what's happening or the meetings or whatever, this is about COVID, and do you have electronic boards set up, and talking about that digital place, do you have your board set up, if we were to not be able to be here tomorrow, would you be okay? So we sort of did that, help the teams out, and yeah, it was 3 or 4 days later, it was that whole lockdown thing. So yeah, that was a sort of personal impact, I suppose. In the physical world, like Nick was talking about, that definitely changed in the sense that the physical boards were no longer there, and that's a big part of your life, coach, team, and you were doing your meetings virtually. I had to eat a bit of humble pie, I have to be honest, because I'd gone quite hard on the physical boards, and the physical board, and you can touch, and I even, I don't know, some coaches can relate it. There's a way to tear off a sticky note that it doesn't, it doesn't bend on the board and drop off, and then there's sort of an advanced way. Yeah, you could demonstrate, and then there's an advanced way apparently, which is you pull it down, you don't even, anyway. So I've honed those skills. But yeah, you could just see it working. You know, the guys were collaborating, the tickets were moving across the board, and yeah, you know, we were all video conferencing. We stopped short of mandating the face-to-face, but it was definitely a consideration. We really sort of encouraged just cameras on, and it's a new sort of social interaction, I suppose. Resilience and adaptability, that's really, and I talked to a few coaches before this at Freedom, you know, just the sheer resilience of people was just amazing, you know, and it makes you wonder what's possible if, you know, with that level of ability to flex and change, you know, if we could harness that when there's not COVID, you know, it sort of makes you think. Where processes were rigid, that was an issue. I mean, our new software application process is really, really cumbersome, really sort of bureaucratic. And there are reasons for that. For those of us who have a Visa card in our wallets, we're probably quite grateful that there's checks and balances. You know, and you're sitting on that amount of sort of data. But yeah, rightly or wrongly, that is a really bureaucratic process. So we just gave up, and we heard people talking about these cool new things like, you know, and even Miro, and did this, and I did this, and we just were like, well, we've got Microsoft Planner, and that's it, you know. But having said that, you can do actually quite a lot with Microsoft Planner. You know, and you sort of do the assign to, and you do the whole sticky note thing. So it's that innovation and inventiveness. Self-organisation was definitely our friend, and I suspect that most of the sort of knowledge work companies in Auckland, New Zealand were the same, but definitely if you had that command and control sort of structures, I think you would have been a little bit stuffed. Yeah, the team had to self-organise because it was, I remember walking down Queen Street and people taking monitors, and you know, it was that surreal sort of, you know, everyone's carrying their monitors home. It had that surreal sort of vibe to it. So I think the only way really is to sort of trust your teams. Productivity stayed the same for us. So if you want the little sort of data check, I talked to quite a few coaches. I talked to our CTO, and you couldn't make a strong case for saying productivity increased, but you could also not make a strong case for saying productivity decreased. So yeah, essentially that stayed the same, and that was the sort of forced to trust thing. I think the organisation really was forced to trust. As we've heard, you had to trust, and by and large, I think the teams came through. And yeah, just the sort of second to last point was we start to see a sort of a human side emerge, and we say, you know, the virus is a great leveller and we're all equal. Which is true from a medical point of view. You know, the body's a body, but there's a difference between being in your home office with the door closed and being on a kitchen table, you know, in a flat with two kids screaming at your ankle. So it wasn't really an equal, sort of socially equal situation, and I think had hardcore lockdown continued, we may have seen some dialogue around companies. It's certainly a great opportunity for a company to really invest in, you know, employees' welfare, because that was your place, I suppose, your physical place where you connected to your digital place, and that's really not the same. So yeah, probably an opportunity there. And yeah, going forward, we're 2 days a week, so we have to be in the office 2 days a week. That's a visa pilot, so we're the first sort of piloting it, so we're all trying to get positive feedback on it. So I suspect it will stay, and I suspect it will go global, although who would know, but that's my hunch. So yeah, things have changed. I mean, I'm working from home 3 days a week, loving it. It feels more integrated. Your whole life is just sort of a little bit more integrated, so I'm enjoying that. We haven't had the great reset, so just picking up on Ryan the Lions thing, yes, we work from home, but the great reset hasn't happened. And yeah, one of the things that stayed with me was Freedom used to be owned by Hogg Robinson Group, which is a 150-year-old UK company. And I never forget the president of Hogg Robinson coming and saying, you know, for an individual, a year is a long time. That's your life, you know, that's a year of your life. You can get married, have kids. For a corporation, a year's like that, it's 2 board meetings, you know. So there's this disconnect between our lives and the way that the corporate wheels turn, and we've got to sort of close that gap and become a bit more sort of human, not for the sake of just going fast, because it's cool to go fast, but just to sort of humanise it a bit and integrate it. Whether that will happen or how it will happen, who knows? Yeah, cool, that's me.
Lucky last.
Andrew, bring us home.
Hi, I'm Andrew. My perspective of last year is quite different than probably most of the people here. I'll date myself a little bit when I say that I hadn't worked in New Zealand for 31 years at the beginning of last year. So I returned from the States late 2019. Was going to retire to the beach, ended up getting a job. So I started work early February, bought a house mid-February, just moved into the house, and then lockdown. Right? And so for me, I was learning about differences between working in the US and very large corporations, small companies in New Zealand, different ways of doing things, different job titles, different expectations. Wow. Also learned that I don't function particularly well without espresso. Couldn't buy a machine before we moved into the house, so I was every day, Harvey Norman, is it an essential item, mate? Is it an essential item? Yeah, so for me it's interesting, right? I think probably the most interesting thing for me coming back and seeing what happened in New Zealand is, as an island nation, when you close the borders, you suddenly lock out a very large pool of talent. So as a company that's trying to grow rapidly right now, all we're doing is competing with a large number of other employers, mostly in the Auckland area for technical talent, right? Yep. Really not particularly productive to keep raising salaries. There's only so much you can do for benefits. I know we're a great place to work, but that's not the biggest draw. So, stopping that flow of talent, both directly through importing talent as well as people being able to go to university in New Zealand and graduate and come back into the workforce, has been a huge problem for us, and I think that's going to continue for several years. It's not going to just change overnight. I think there's going to be this lag from an educational perspective where the people that would have been graduating next year or the year after aren't going to be there. So trying to hire junior talent to try and grow them in your organization is super tough. I think for me, the work from home thing, when I was at Microsoft for a very long time, I worked globally, I worked with teams all over the world, so being on a screen for most of my day was not a really big deal, but it was for other people in the organization. My CEO is an ex-banker, he's if you're not in the office, you're not working kind of person. And so
those people exist.
but I think it was great for him, right, because productivity didn't drop. Right, it took a little while to get some of the rhythms going. As an exec team, we would do a stand-up every morning, which he'd never done before, just to kind of check in, see how we're doing, see how our teams were doing. It was kind of a wellness check for us, as well as a wellness check for the teams, and it really helped to bring the exec team together, and also helped my boss and some of my peers to understand that you can work remotely. It's not a big deal. So that's a huge plus for us. I think, something that Ryan said earlier, there's a lot of opportunities from a business perspective coming out of this. We have a team that had built a great mobile order and pay solution for McDonald's in Japan, right? Japan fast-tracked the rollout of that like you wouldn't believe. Of course, us a lot of challenges with scale, but we met those challenges. But then they were part of their experimentation about Japan. If you haven't been there, it's not a lot of drive-throughs, not a lot of space for drive-throughs. So they started experimenting with just pure counter pickup, curbside pickup, and other ways of getting food to their consumers, so that they didn't have to shut their stores completely, right? So if you happen to be at an online ordering company or a delivery company coming into COVID, you probably made bank out of that because they've grown so fast. Every restaurateur, restaurant chain, quick service restaurant company that we talk to is massively accelerating their move to digital, move to online. And the good thing for us is they're all actually trying to own it themselves. The Grubhubs, the Uber Eats kind of take your customers away from you, and they're all actually going, we don't want that, we want the data, we want the relationship, so how can you help us do that? So that's, I think, a huge win for us. I think, the thing I think I'm really happy with what happened with our teams, right? So I came in to help. We were not doing a digital transformation. That's what Beth and I were doing at Nike a few years ago. We're really just doing an organizational transformation to grow as quickly as we can to meet our customers' demands, right? And we were able to hire very successfully throughout COVID. I think interviews get a little bit harder, onboarding gets a little bit harder, but we put processes in place to make those things work. And this actually helped us as we've gone back into the office to do the onboarding more quickly, to be more comfortable hiring. And that working from home gave the executive team the confidence too that, hey, we don't have to have everyone in the office every day, which helps us because we don't fit in our building anymore. So rather than having everyone in the office right now, we have a rotation. We do 3 days in each, and I have my teams offset slightly throughout the week, and we have 1 day a week when we're all in. And I think that's helped people. There are a lot of people I think that like to be at home and work from home. I'm one of them. Lockdown for me was like, yeah, I'm gonna be at home. But there are other people that are social and they need that interaction. I think giving teams the opportunity to kind of choose their timing, but having just one day a week where everyone can get together, meet, do anything you need from a cross-organisation perspective is working incredibly well. So I think, overall, I think it's been a positive thing for us. I think being in New Zealand, we're super lucky. I have lots of friends in the States who haven't been to work for over a year now. I have friends of friends who have been diagnosed with COVID. I know a few people who have died of COVID. And despite the harshness of our lockdown, the fact that we've been able to do all this, we had an America's Cup. I've been to rugby games. It's fantastic. So, yeah, it's been a great year for me.
So many lessons. And I really thank you all for coming. It's so good. I love how each story was a little bit different. So I want to ask you, before we get to Q&A, first of all, let's just stand up for a second. A little stretch out, shake it out, do whatever you need to do, move around. This is one of the other problems about working from home. Who sits at their desk for hours on end? You gotta start, Pomodoro, that app? We gotta start using Pomodoro, right? The little timer, every 20 minutes, just get up, walk around. Maybe some of you have Fitbits, whatever. But yeah, it's so important. I'm terrible about it. I check my step counter, it's 63 steps. Okay, that's really bad. So, all right. Back down. Thank you. We're going to start Q&A. So we have a lot of questions on Menti, so thank you so much. But feel free to ask out loud, right? Because we are one big happy family. But I do want to ask you all, after hearing the stories, were there any key takeaways from each other? Something that surprised you or you can relate to?
I think we can relate to all of it.
Yeah.
The one day of the week, getting together usually is a Monday for us. The beers and quizzes at the end of the week, I actually still miss those now. I want to reinstate them.
We actually did, when we all were able to come back into the office, everyone enjoyed that Friday 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
We actually carried that on, and people left at 12 on a Friday to get home so they could dial in.
I gotta get home for happy hour. Yeah, nice. Look, I think it was amazing. So, and again, you all touched on different aspects. So, thank you so much. All right, we're opening it up. Who's got a burning question? Don't be shy. I'll start picking. Are we just going to get Menti? Are we just going to go Menti?
Question
Come
for
on
you.
now. Yeah, there we go.
You mentioned about a third of the staff put off or laid off. How did you make that decision? Was it based on they were working on particular projects and you decided to can those projects, or were there other reasons?
Largely that. So projects that were stopped, simply, and if we couldn't redeploy them onto other projects, that's how we came up with the unfortunate list.
Yeah. What did you do for your team members that stayed? Because so often we neglect that part of the the 5 steps, right? The morning phase, we always forget about that.
Yeah, it was tough because it was all done virtually, so I was ringing people up on the phone, and it was a very unpleasant experience. If anyone's had to do that, it's not great. So we tried to huddle where we could, and I've got a large team, and I tried to personally call everybody.
Nice.
And just tell them how thankful we are that they're still with us, and try and reassure them as well, because despite we've been through that first restructure and downsizing, there was still an expectation probably that we might have to go further. If we weren't able to open our doors come 1st of October, so that was the long term, we were in real trouble. So whilst we went through the first iteration and we hoped that it would be our last, and it did turn out to be our last, I think there was still a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How many of you were affected? Did anyone here lose their jobs because of COVID? Wow, that's amazing. Ryan? Still looking?
No, well, I lost 90% of my revenue.
Yeah, because that's right, consulting, right? So yeah, for me, I left ANZ before lockdown, but during, lockdown happened during my 4-week notice period. So it happened, I called my boss who's in Wellington, and And I said, what do I do? He goes, just put your stuff in your locker and go. Love you too. So yeah, look, and that's, again, there was no, and and Angela knows this, because I've been back to ANZ and met with the tribe, because we never got to say goodbye. So it
We
was
gave
one of
you
those.
gifts like 4 months later.
It was I got my leaving gift, and I'm using it next week, so that's awesome. All right, what other questions? So Bianca, come on up here. Don't be shy.
All right, we've got a question here around what did you do for employees that remained
And
in the
that's what we-
business?
Yep.
Resilient strategies?
Yeah.
Need to hear from across the board, maybe.
So what did you do? Did you guys have to let people go? No.
We didn't.
No. Yeah, so just calling every day, which is awesome. What's another question?
The question is another agile favorite, much like the post-it notes, is co-location. What's your views now around co-location when often we're obviously doing virtual and in person? What's your thoughts?
Different change.
I think it's important where possible for people to come together and connect in person, right? I don't think you can ever take away that human interaction, but we can work around it if you can't, right? And that's why we kind of, obviously we say, and said like, come together 2 days a week, see how people are, have that human. We can work through it, but it's nice when we can also meet in person.
Yeah, look, I'm very similar to Chris. I mean, I was always a massive believer. I mean, we talked on LinkedIn many times about just the tactileness of everything, but I've totally changed my mindset to co-location in a digital space. So for me, I'm still co-located. I'm just in a digital space with my team. And so, whether it was working directly with a software team or even now, coaching across teams, when we come together, we're all together virtually.
Yeah, I'd be a lot more open to it, having been reasonably sort of, face-to-face is best, Agile Manifesto stuff. The time zone is hard though, so we have office in the UK and then someone's going to get up, outside of hours and family time. And so there's no real way around that 12-hour time zone. Yeah, that's a factor.
And now in our really tight job market, that's a requirement, is that flexibility. So it's actually, people will go, there's no flexibility, then I won't go to that company. Like, it's actually one of their key requirements with location and salary, it's flexibility. So I don't think we can step away with it, we need to work with it.
Yeah, and we have started doing remote hiring just because of the fact that we've gotten, again, the executive team comfortable with people don't have to be in the office.
Right.
Not everyone wants to live in Auckland, I can understand why. So yeah, we're hiring around the country. We are, we'll obviously have people come up and spend 2 months for onboarding and then at other times throughout the year, but there's no real, oh my God, you have to be in the office anymore, right? Which is, there are companies in the world that have never been located in the same places. The Unity game engine guys who were in Denmark, I think, they were never in the same office, they're all distributed, and it works quite well with the right company culture to support it.
Have any of your offices, and I'm asking the crowd here too, but gone back to the old way? Like you have to be there? Is anyone? Yeah. Like there are still some work to be done, eh?
So
Yes.
I'm actually curious. So you talked about basically the positives a lot, all of you. But in my mind, the fact that when you were talking, you said that people had to go through basically a lot more backlog of work, and they had to do that more quickly than they did it before. So did that actually lower the quality of the work?
I would have to say yes. I mean, the volume of the backlog to refine is just too big to do justice to it properly. So yeah, definitely a lot of coaching had to happen with those people that were maintaining those big backlogs. That's still true today.
Do you see that gap being bridged basically while people are still in this mode, or do you see them having to go back to the office to be able to?
No, I don't think it's anything to do with whether it's physical or digital. I think a lot of that problem for us anyway is those particular people have come from a non-agile background, mostly operational, and so they haven't really yet learned how to split stories well or set really good acceptance criteria and maintain a backlog properly. So that's really that happens digitally and happens physically. So
It's a good thing you have a good coaching team.
I know, sure. Oh yeah, couldn't do it without him.
Jim?
Okay, I just got a question about the online environment. So you mentioned one of the things you like people to do is turn on their camera. Did you have any other tricks to make it feel like it was more of an interactive and
Dashboards. Lots and lots and lots of dashboards,
so did you use the dashboards like simultaneously or separately with?
So we have the dashboards obviously for data, for serious stuff.
Yeah, right.
But then we can do whatever the hell we want to with our dashboard. So every team has a fun dashboard where they can put up photos.
Nice.
We've got teams called Knight Rider and they've got David Hasselhoff and kits and stuff like that, and so you can personalise it. And then Microsoft Whiteboard was, Miro's my favourite, but it's not corporate, so I have to use Microsoft Whiteboard. And yeah.
It's crushing.
But the fun thing was, nobody had really used it before, and I opened it up, and everybody jumped in and started swearing it and putting silly marks. And I was like, great, we're off and running. It's fantastic.
I think one of the things I saw was we used Slack a lot more for kind of like those 2-minute conversations. So you're typing with somebody, /Zoom, you're in a call. It's kind of like your normal drive-by in the office, and then you're done and out again.
Yeah.
And we did similar kind of crazy sharing in Slack of photos and
All the gifts.
Yeah.
Did you ever do any pop-up meetings, like where you're just, like I did open up a Teams meeting at like office hours, and people
Yeah.
just pop in? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, just any way to communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first lockdown, we just had, and this is something I took from Westpac actually, because we were split between Auckland and Wellington a lot. We had a video conference on almost all day, so we just popped by it.
Exactly.
So we kind of recreated that with Teams or Skype.
That's perfect,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, Yinka in the back?
No, yeah, I was just really off the back of that question around, so Scrum says you do 15-minute stand-up. How many of you had to stick to that?
No.
You had to bring your human self to work, so to the stand-ups.
It's a guide.
Yeah,
15 minutes is a guide.
People saying you have to do it, but how did you make that? Because for me, one of the things that we did was I just increased the time to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
15 minutes asking everyone how you do it.
Absolutely.
We just didn't go down rabbit holes,
Yeah.
but we had a lot of fun.
You're still not solutioning, right? But you're still making that connection. Nice. Russell?
Just a question about kind of the culture in your organisation, the change in culture. So, you mentioned that some of the senior leadership were kind of like nervous about people working from home, listening, things like that. So more about how, I guess, your senior leadership or other people in your organisation outside of your teams deal with collaboration now in a new way. Has it changed? Is it different from a culture?
Well, I think the examples I gave are like particularly having the team comfortable with us doing only 3 days of the week in the office. The remote hiring is now a thing that we're doing, and also just that kind of stand-up chicken for the exec team, right? Again, just how it's been very, very powerful. And I do the same thing with my leads every day, and it's not a true stand-up. It's because it's like not always what am I going to achieve today. It's like, oh, I've got this stuff to do. Can you help me with this? Hey, I need to talk to you about that kind of thing. And so it's a really good connection first thing in the morning.
That's it, yeah. And then like Ryan touched on, the connection, right? That's really what we can do. We can do virtually or physically. Yep.
Yes, a question for the panel. I think, Andrew, you mentioned this a little bit, with the difficulty of getting talent from overseas and the slowdown of graduate coming through. Do you see that offshoring, there will be more appetite for offshoring, and that might more going forward?
I think it's a really tough one. I think definitely I would consider offshoring, but not outsourcing if I could. And the difference for me is that if I could stand up a team somewhere else with a trusted leader, that would work really well. I know companies have done that where they've had somebody return to their home country or other things, and they've built a small team around them, and it works really, really well. I'm super nervous about outsourcing key product developments with a third party where you have nowhere near as much control as you do in a physical company.
Especially the CX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just kind of following that same question, your other point here was skills shortage in New Zealand. Having to do. Can you go into that a little bit more? Is that because of the overseas students or a general slowdown?
So I think it's both, right? So again, my experience was really odd, where I dropped into the country right before a lockdown, and I was still trying to hire a team. I'm a Kiwi. I graduated and I booked it out of the country for 31 years. That's a problem. Well, not me, but for New Zealand. So I think there's the, how do you get more people studying in New Zealand? And obviously the universities are massively bigger than when I left. It's quite interesting. But how do you retain that talent in the country is a huge problem, right? When I was at Microsoft originally, I was working on the graphics driver for the Dreamcast game console. There were 2 Kiwis working on it, and our key contact in the UK was another Kiwi, right? And so there's all this talent that's really good in New Zealand, but at least because you get great international experience, you can earn a lot of money, and so it does hamper companies in New Zealand. And I think that the lockdown just amplified that. It's like less students coming in, much less ability to hire remotely. You can't even fly anybody for an interview. And I do think that what I'm hoping that the government realises that this is a critical resource that the country needs, and they need to do more to help the companies in New Zealand survive. I don't know if Celia is still here, but I think her daughter works at Rocket Labs, and they're trying to hire rocket engineers continually, and there's not many of those in New Zealand, right? And so for them, it's been crushing to try and bring on new talent.
We've taken a slightly different approach, trying to work with the problem at hand, and we're also seeing, and I don't know whether you've seen that yourselves, given that the pool is really small, we're seeing people applying for roles that are 2 or 3 levels above where they they really are, but their expectation is that they're up there, and that makes it quite difficult in terms of the conversation you have. But we're actually trying to do something a bit different and get our executive to stop spending, and rather than giving them the illusion that we can tool up and we can resource up to meet a demand when we know we can't. Let's just focus on the 2 things that are really, really important for us, and stop starting stuff. And that way we'll work with an existing resource pool that we know that we've got.
Just need you to come to Stop starting. Stop.
I think it's just one more thing around talent. I think as organisations we have a responsibility to develop talent as well. So one of the things that I'm involved with is Summer of Tech. We bring interns in, and we also have a grad program. So while there's, we don't have a lot of talent available in the market, we also have to have responsibility to develop it and have those career pathways, because they will go overseas and that. But if they you bring them in at an intern or a grad, actually you've got them, you can invest in them, they get excited and see that, and now you can leave a company for a year and then come back and all those other great things. So there's also about on the companies now to actually invest and to grow their talent and career path as well.
Just also something that I only really tweaked today was just over the last 6 months, because we recognised how hard it was to find good Scrum Masters for the team. We looked internally, and just within the last 6 months, myself and Sonali and Todd, we've helped 6 of our own people become professional Scrum Masters, certified Scrum Masters from within our own staff. It's been really good.
Look, and that's really where it is, right? It's finding that talent. And I know Genesis, we had a meet up with them a couple of weeks ago. They're doing the same thing, growing your own Scrum Masters. Hi.
This is for Greg Gundy. Greg mentioned in his talk that something about command and control. How did the team take? What are the challenges you guys faced when the transformation is happening from the old approach to the new approach? And how did you convince the team to be self-managed?
There's a couple of questions in there, aren't there?
Good question.
So the command and control behaviours were largely coming from managers. As we made work more visible and transparent, it exposes people. And I wouldn't say that that's completely gone away. What we've tried to do is turn it around on them to try and understand what feeling of loss, because I think it comes from a loss of, a sense of loss, is to understand what that loss is and try and frame it a different way for them. It might be that I used to sign off that statement of work, or I used to approve that purchase order and now I don't. Is trying to understand what it is that they're losing and how can we backfill that with something that's really valuable for them. It's not an easy task, and we have learned behaviours over many years, and sometimes, often they take a while to to learn new behaviours.
Yeah, it is kind of being authoritative or a kind of a signatory for someone. For example, the PO or something, they feel that they are in control doing that kind of a job, and then letting it go.
Yeah, but people, particularly specialists, I see that a lot with specialists that have a deep eye,
Yeah.
or the eye part of the team,
Cheese.
that are defined by the work they do, not necessarily by the value they create. And if you take that away from them, they don't have, it's right, they go, oh shit, what am I going to do? Who am I? Do I add value? Do people see that I add value anymore? But also, I think the environment that we were in, I think I might have mentioned this, the feeling of uncertainty about do I keep my job, and if I'm losing elements of my job now, am I still relevant? Will I still be hired next week? So I think that played a big part in the initial challenges that we had. It certainly improved a lot, and I think it's improved because people now trust the process. They were doing the process because they were told to do it. It wasn't a decision that everyone was able to make. There was clear strategy and direction, and we implemented it. But as they start to see the benefits, and that people still got their jobs, and we're hiring, and it's actually a more fun way of working, I think we've just started to relax some of those concerns.
Sorry.
Sam, sorry, I saw this. So this is a question for Nick. So Greg, you mentioned you'd come up with what ifs, and then Nick would design the experiments around it. I mean, others might have. I'm curious what methods and approaches you did, how you would design an experiment, and others on the panel.
Look, my family is very scientific, so it's the traditional scientific method. I'm a high-functioning autistic, so is my wife, and so is my daughter. And so we approach everything in a very scientific way. Greg will give me the outcome that he wants to try and achieve, and I'll dream up a hypothesis that might fit that, and look for a bit of research to try and figure out what resources I have that don't cost any money, to try and create what it is that Greg's trying to achieve. Run the experiment as quickly and cheaply as I possibly can, cheap by effort standards, as opposed to money, and get a result and see whether it does or doesn't meet my hypothesis. Well, I'll give you the example where Greg said to me a couple of years ago, hey, do you think we could do all our financial management inside Azure DevOps, even though it doesn't do financial management? Actually, and I had no idea whether it would or wouldn't. I just went, I can customize fields, and that's how it started. So, research, hypothesis, experiment at a small scale, then repeat the experiment once I get something positive, and then start scaling it out. But the key I've always had with Greg, and I've been working with Greg for lots of years now, and what I've found really works between us is he'll give me the what if, and my job is to get back to him with something to test as quickly as possible to make sure I'm on the right direction. And I'll do the experiment quick, say, hey, is this kind of the right direction? Great, I'll go and do another. Am I moving in the right direction? Great, now I'll go for it. So it's a very enjoyable way of working, and I really do enjoy working that way.
Management support is key.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, David. So I understand the I in team, and if you take away their, I, and they no longer have a clipboard, and they've actually got to work. But I realise you're using DevOps, but what is the rest of the team using? Because I'm a Microsoft guy, I eat and breathe and sleep it and use it all the time. But for example, I use Teams. So what was your collaborative tools, or what are your collaborative tools that you're currently using? Because in my perspective, I've tried to analyse and look at the whole swag of stuff, but you've got to use like 6 programs to get one achievement, whereas using Teams, it's actually all inside Teams. Collaborative tools.
Do you mean like as a complete suite with the video, or are you talking about project management software?
The actual, you can do a lot of, as you mentioned, Planner, you can actually do that within Teams. That's why I'm actually, because from my perspective, I'm trying to grasp what tools you used remotely, because once you become digitized, like you mentioned, signing off, that's, to me, has been digitally done for years, and yet why are people still signing a piece of paper?
Oh, sorry, system approvals,
Yeah.
So certainly in lockdown, I mean, it was Azure DevOps and Teams or Skype for us. That was pretty much all of us, and some teams used Teams without using Azure DevOps, ADO, because you can show Azure DevOps through Teams.
Yep.
We tried to keep it as simple as possible because we didn't want people to get app fatigue. So
we use Jira. I think these tools do sell themselves as project management tools. I sort of personally look at them more as task management tools, and I put the whole lot in that bucket. And managing a project is really more multifaceted than simply that you do this task and, you know, is it done? They've got their place, but I think possibly there's more to the world than Jira or Azure DevOps or any other tool.
Yeah, we have different, like we have on our business side, they tend to use Skype, we use Slack, we have a video conferencing for ANZ that's been set up. So I think it just depends on the organisation and where they're heading towards as well.
And were you using all those tools before COVID?
Yeah. Yeah, we were.
Yep.
Maybe not the virtual whiteboards.
Yeah.
The virtual whiteboards were something that definitely got used way more.
Because where I'm aiming my general direction, because of the theme for tonight, did COVID accelerate the reason why you're doing what you're doing
And
now?
I didn't use Loom before.
Yeah.
I used Loom to capture videos.
I've never used Loom.
So you can use it for capturing video messages and also for capturing what I'm doing on the screen. That one I used a lot. I'd never used it before.
Also, a lot of those tools became the default. You know, when people do retros, virtual retros, and different, that became the default rather than before it was like, we're going to do it on a whiteboard and then we'll move it in, right? Whereas now you go to your Agile, your Jira boards and all of those things, they're now your default and your sources of truth as well. So, yeah.
Many different tips and tricks. So I'm just conscious of time, right? So we have heaps of questions on the Menti. What I'll do is I will post those for you guys, or we'll email them out. Maybe we'll have a little forum. But thank you all for coming, and thank you to our panel. I mean, that was you want to come up? What's your plan?
I'm going to do some very quick closing remarks, but they're going to be super quick because at the end we did promise to do a giveaway. Feel free to stay there if you like. First and foremost, it seems like 2020 was a bit of a year of reflection. So in the spirit of retros, you know how people say to you, you've got one job, right? You've got one job. My one job was to organise Ryan the Line. So I was directly accountable for one of his disasters today, so apologies to Ryan.
She's not the car
But anyway, moving on from that, in my household, COVID, when it first hit, was a little bit like Andrew's. My husband is a raving introvert, and he works in IT. You're probably building a bit of a picture. So for the first time ever in my life, I heard him in his office singing. It's a very disconcerting sound, I tell you that. So it was a little bit different in our household as well. So look, I thought what I would do is actually run through a bit of a summary of the key learnings that I took away from you guys. So look, number one, it's definitely a year of reflection. So how can we do things differently? The what if, and you're on mute. We're definitely 2020. So here's some of the other things that I took away. One, about being the power of being connected and human connection. Bringing our full self to our conversations, and that includes with the camera on, to the next point. Also about how important visualization and data is, so we can compensate from not being able to see the full story in the corridor conversations. That we still need a place to meet, even if it's virtual. And that was a really strong, powerful point. And purposefully not perfect was one of my favorite phrases from today. That culture, making decisions fast, and leadership are as critical as ever. And that planning is not a meeting. Right? And collaboration remains being key.
Book it to the project, not admin code.
Yeah. So people being open, connected, and from a leadership perspective, I love the phrase, I've got you. And even though we're freaking out on the inside, We're a bit like the ducks, and we're calm on the outside, but we make space for listening. So as leaders of being resilient to that, I thought was really powerful. Supporting each other and enabling self-organization, that means that we have to trust, and let's hope that it doesn't take another COVID for us to force ourselves to think and be trustful of our teams, and focusing on our team's welfare. And speaking of the teams, the important and the investment that we might need to make actually on talent, hiring, onboarding, development, and how do we bring those things forward. And finally, I think the most important tip for me was actually that if we do go back into lockdown, we don't need to worry about toilet paper because we have our alternative. The mighty cloth.
Yeah, many uses.
And if anybody wants to know what preferences and textiles are most opportune, chicken and Christmas.
Never came to that, fortunately.
But most importantly, let's hope that we don't have another COVID before we go. Actually, there's a great opportunity for a reset, to link back to the words from Ryan the Lion at the beginning. All right, those are my key learnings. Thank you very much, everyone.